It's Thursday, July 9th, 2020, and you have tuned in to the live stream. Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. Now, normally, Ezra Levent, the big boss man himself, he's here in this spot at this time. But every Tuesday and Thursday, to give Ezra a much-deserved and well-needed break, it is me, David Menzies, and my co-host, Sheila, the she-devil Gun Reed, who take over the live stream. And at this point, I want to welcome Sheila to the show. And I've told you before, Sheila, not to wear T-shirts with words on them. As you know, I find it extremely distracting. But I do recognize that T-shirt. Looks like you're still waiting for your Hacksaw Jim Duggan shirt to come, because that's the Macho Man Randy Savage. Ooh, yeah, dig it.
David, it's a good thing that I don't take fashion advice from you anyway, so I don't really care if you don't like that I wear shirts with logos. Should we tell people what we're doing here today? Probably. Before this gets right off the rails. I feel like that's the kind of day that this is going to be for us.
Oh, by the way, Sheila, I want to compliment you and Ezra for the excellent work you did on that debate, so-called. And where was Peter MacKay, anyways? What's the official reason he's not showing up to these things now?
I have no idea. Like I said to Ezra last night, I think they've got the Biden strategy going on there, where they're just sort of keeping him out of any sort of tough questions, where they're not completely in control of whatever's happening, to prevent him from saying something that might alienate actual conservatives. And frankly, as was pointed out wisely in our morning staff meeting, while Sloan may have won the debate, which I think is kind of the consensus, that Sloan really carried the flag for conservatives, blue Tories last night, everybody's talking about Peter MacKay. Everybody's still talking about where was he, what was he doing, why wasn't he there? So I guess, you know, all press being good press, it seems as though Peter MacKay won the debate by not even participating in it.
Amazing. Because the way I interpret it, it's just him saying, come on, hurry up, coordinate me already. Enough of this, pomp and circumstance, which speaks to entitlement. And, Sheila, it does not, but he is the front runner, I presume. And boy, how confident do you feel for victory by the Conservative Party of Canada in the next election, if indeed it is Peter MacKay?
Oh, this is going to be, as Ezra points out, Justin Trudeau's 1,000-year reign. Like he's going to be prime minister as long as he wants, until Conservatives get their act together. I don't feel as though Peter MacKay has any passion for this. He doesn't have any bold new ideas. There's nothing about him that I don't think really excites Tories who, want to see fighting back. We've really seen no fighting back against the media, against Justin Trudeau. And I don't think Peter MacKay offers that. I think he just thinks that this is his turn. Like he did his part. He stepped sort of into Stephen Harper's shadow when he needed to be in the shadow, bided his time, left politics, sees an opportunity, he's coming back because he figures it's his turn, which is a very Trudeau way to look at things. I think Trudeau has the same mentality. I don't think he has really any passion for the job. I think that much is clear. But it's just his turn. It was his dad's job, now it's his.
Well, Sheila, you said he doesn't fight back against the media. That's not entirely true when it comes to us, the Rebel News. He fights back. When I confronted him in January to ask him a softball question that he could have hit out of the ballpark that appeals to all conservatives, namely a freedom of speech issue, Ezra being taken before the Elections Canada thugs about having the temerity to write a negative book about Justin Trudeau. I asked him about how does he feel about that interrogation of our boss, and his answer to me was, I feel like I'm being interrogated right now, And then when Kean last month tried to get him on comment, to get a comment from him, he ran and hid in a bathroom. Now, Sheila, David Menzies, Kean Bexley, we're not heads of state of repugnant regimes, which presumably, if he became prime minister, he would have to deal with. But he can't even take our relatively soft questions about issues that speak to the base of the Conservative base. So, this is what I find so disappointing, especially since I had such great hopes from him when he, after election night, talked about Andrew Scheer missing an empty net on a breakaway. And it was like such frank talk. It almost sounded like populism. And if we're using a hockey analogy, I think Peter MacKay smashed his face in jumping over the boards for his shift. Never even got into the breakaway mode. It has been so disappointing. And if this is what we're going to get, here's my prediction. Maybe it's all for good. Maybe the Conservative Party, after Thing 1 Scheer and Thing 2 MacKay, decide we have to burn this down to the roots and rise phoenix-like with a true Conservative leader if we have any hope of governance, any hope of appealing to me and you and our 1.3 million YouTube subscribers, because right now I ain't buying what Peter MacKay is selling.
No. And, when you look at him, is there really any distance between him and, let's say, Paul Martin? Yeah, he's probably just a pro-enterprise liberal at this point. No wonder. It's really no wonder that he has a difficult time answering these questions that we have. They aren't trick questions. We're trying to ask questions to gauge his opinions on really easy conservative topics like free speech. And yet, he avoids those questions like they're the plague, which makes me wonder, is there any difference between Peter MacKay and Justin Trudeau when it comes to censoring or regulating the internet? Because when you're scared of the idea of defending free speech, are you really a conservative at all? It seems like that's one of the cornerstones of our ideology.
Paul Martin, that's a great comparison, Sheila, because in fairness, I thought he was actually a very good finance minister. He fell apart when he decided to run for the Liberal leadership. And I'll tell you what the seminal moment was. It was in December, and it was a photo op, which I'm sure Paul Martin, in retrospect, wishes he never staged. And it was at his, I think, his residence, and he had this beautiful Christmas wreath. And he was putting it on the door, and one of the journalists asked, "Mr. Martin, is that a Christmas wreath or a holiday wreath?" And he looked like Bambi staring into the high beams of a Hummer doing 150 kilometers an hour. And he panicked, and he couldn't say either way, Sheila. He went, it's a $50 wreath. That was his answer. And I think that was the birth of him getting the nickname, which in politics you can never recover from, of Mr. Dithers. Yeah.
Now, should we tell everybody what we're doing here? Because we are...
I'd rather just blather on for the whole hour, Sheila. I got lots to say, but no.
That's generally what we do. But yeah, we're 8 minutes into the show, and we haven't told anybody what we're doing, and people are already super chatting us, so maybe we should tell the rest of the almost 600 people who are currently watching us what they can do to support the work that we do here. So, as you pointed out, this is normally Ezra's 1 hour long show. It used to only be on Friday. We increased it to every single day of the week. That started during the pandemic because as our competitors in the mainstream media were cutting back coverage, we decided to provide more coverage because there's more news than ever right now. So that's what we did. And then Ezra started working on his book, China Virus, which is out now. And so David and I took over Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'm happy to say that they aren't taking that away from us now that the book has gone live. And I think it's a number 2 bestseller in the country. But what people can do to support the work we do is they can do something called a super chat. So if you click that little $sign at the bottom of the live chat where people are talking back and forth with each other, they can throw some money in the pot. It'll highlight your comment and append it to the top of the chat. And I'll see it out of the corner of my eye, or if I miss it, which is likely the case, Mr. Producer, Justin, who had a very long night last night, by the way, he will send it to me, and David and I will read it aloud, we'll comment on the topic that you're interested in, or if you have a question for us, we'll try our best to answer that question. Or if you just have something embarrassing that you want me to read on air, you know what? I'll take your money and do that too.
Yes.
That's fine.
Mr. Producer worked very hard, but Sheila, he rewarded himself with a brand new automobile today. I believe it's a Ford Mustang Shelby GT500. Of course, I'm jesting. It's just a Ford. I won't embarrass him with what model he actually bought. Oh, he's now saying it's for my wife. Waving the white flag of suburban surrender already, eh? Anyways, but he deserves a new car, even though it's something you'd probably see soccer moms driving. But good on you, Justin.
You drive an electric guitar. You check yourself before you wreck yourself. You drive an electric vehicle.
No,
How
it's a
dare
plug-in
you?
hybrid.
Hideous. You plug it in like a vacuum cleaner.
I told you, it's just to drive in the HOV lane by myself because I'm so antisocial in my commuting.
Sure. How dare you mock Justin for the combustion engine that he earned, that he's providing for his beautiful wife, who puts up with his late hours, and you drive an electric vehicle. For shame, David Menzies.
Well, I believe you're in town tomorrow. So when you take a gander goose at the car, Mr. Producer is now driving. Sorry, Mr. Producer's wife is now driving.
Stop it.
I'm gonna archive what you just said because you're gonna eat your words, she-devil. Anyways, we have some super chats already, don't we?
Yes, we do. Okay, Kane and Mark gives us $2 Canadian. Toilet heater was fantastic, made me pee a little. Yeah, if you watched the stream live last night, Ezra and I got the giggles sort of making fun of Peter MacKay when he locked himself in a bathroom to hide from Cian Bexty's very easy question. Like I remarked to Ezra last night, if that's his escape hatch is to lock yourself in a bathroom, he's going to need a staffer who has a map to every bathroom in the country because the media are going to eat him alive on the campaign trail. He's got to toughen up. He's got to learn his answers. You don't even have to know the answer. If you have your politics rooted in sound ideology, you know the answer to every question that's coming your way. And I don't think Peter MacKay's that guy.
Did he lock himself in the men's room or the ladies' room, Sheila?
I don't think it matters when you're locking yourself in a bathroom to avoid babyface Cian Bexty.
God, this guy's making crybaby Patrick Brown look like Sir Winston Churchill already. But anyways, continue.
Pink Phoenix Nails gives us $1.49. Thank you very much. Jeremy Paul gives us $5, and Justin said, "Be careful with this comment." Her shirt is distracting, brings attention to her guns. Teehee. I'm assuming you mean my pipes.
Oh, those guns.
Pipe.
Okay.
Yeah, the gun show. Don't forget the ever dapper David. Your reports are always great. Are they not? And he always looks great. David is like an old school reporter that always wears a suit, and I just wander in from gardening and get on camera.
Believe me, folks, inside I'm crying.
I know, it's so hot in Toronto right now, isn't it? I was checking
Sheila,
the weather.
it's so hot. It is so hot.
How hot is it?
I saw a dog chasing a cat, and they were both walking.
That's the same joke you told me on
have I
Tuesday.
used that one already?
Like all your jokes. You just recycle them.
Well, we're supposed to do that.
KT, I don't believe in recycling. $10. KT gives us $10 Canadian. There's no super chat. Proud Boys Calgary. Best part of the live stream last night, Sheila's reactions. Peter was trespassed in the potty. CCP must be destroyed. Join ProudBoysCanada.com. Yeah. My son and his friends watched the live stream, like this one and the one before, just because of the faces I make as people are talking.
You know what, Sheila? We need that semi-literate City Hall security guard to go into the hotel and say from behind the other door, "Get out of that bathroom, Mr. MacKay, or I'm going to trespass you."
C182 OPR gives us $10 Canadian. Voted Conservative for 30 plus years, but last election, PPC all the way.
Yep.
After Max got cancellaed, will never vote Conservative again. sometimes the rot is so bad you've got to burn the house to the ground and start again. Yeah, I think my prediction, if Peter MacKay wins, I think we'll see a rise of regional conservative parties,
Sheila,
especially in the West.
That comment about Max getting cancellaed, that for Lady Menzoid was the final straw. Not me getting arrested and handcuffed by the RCMP at an Andrew Scheer press conference, and almost run over by a bus. No, she let that slide. But when Maxime Bernier was the target of a smear campaign, getting Kinsella, that liberal lapdog, to dig up mud on him at the behest of Scheer. That's when she switched her vote to PPC. It is unbelievable how this party victimizes itself with so many self-inflicted wounds, isn't it, Sheila?
Yeah, and I think the Conservative Party is trying to change its tone, but they have not ever made any sort of, any attempt to redeem themselves for that. Yeah. I know that Derek Sloan does appeal to some of those PPC voters, and it's so divisive. And I hate to use that word because the left uses it all the time. But they really did malign and were very malicious towards those PPC voters who had been probably, like our super chatter here, lifelong loyal conservative donors,
100%.
Voters, volunteers, and they were treated like garbage. Nobody tried to be ecumenical towards them, even after the loss, to say, you know what, things are different. We're running a leadership campaign. Things are going to be different. We want you back into the fold. They continue to just leave them out there completely alienated. These are politically motivated, active people. You don't get involved in a brand new party unless you care deeply about politics, and nobody is trying to reach out to them and bring them back. And I find that that is a huge Conservative Party mistake.
And the tragedy, Sheila, is the happiest man on the planet about that is Justin Trudeau.
Yep, absolutely. Prairie Rider gives us $2.79. Can we talk about the budget? You mean the $1.3 trillion in debt that we are? I think it works out to be over $10,000, I think, for every man, woman, and child in the country. Recently accumulated debt. So, it's just horrific. We'll never pay that off. But Justin Trudeau says he took that debt on so that Canadians didn't have to. What does that even mean? Like, if the fact that he doesn't realize that Canadians have to pay for the debt explains a lot, actually, doesn't it?
I was saying to Letty Menzoid last night about that very comment, Sheila. It reminds me when my son was young, I think he was in maybe grade 1, and we were at a mall, and he was demanding I buy him a new Lego set. He's already got about 190 Lego sets. And I said, no, Adam, I told you, I don't have any money. And he said, then go buy some. This is liberal economic policy. Right?
Just go to the bank and get some. Yeah. My kids used to say that to me all the time. They'd be like, I want this. And I'd say, I don't have any cash. And they would say, well, just go to the bank and get some.
Just go further into debt. But the balance will balance itself. The budget will balance itself, though, right?
Yeah. Unless I see Justin Trudeau's $1 million car on Kijiji, I don't want to hear from him saying he took on this debt so that Canadians didn't have to. He's not going to be paying down any more of this thing than I am. He's not some saint. He doesn't go to the money tree behind Rideau Cottage and pluck the fruit of it every day so that we don't have to. We're all going to have to pay for all this out-of-control spending and these CERB payments extensions that seem to be hurting businesses who actually want to get back to work. Because if you want to hire a part-time summer student and you're going to pay them, $2,500 or $3,000 a month to work part-time, they can get $2,000 to just stay at home. So it's hurting businesses that want to open back up, and he just keeps extending them. And this is getting out of control. It really is. And I'm very, very dreadful of what the future will bring. However, I'm kind of hopeful that it'll mean public sector cuts.
Yeah, and by the way, that won't happen. And by the way, I want to correct you when you referred to Justin Trudeau's car. That, I believe it's a 55 Mercedes Gullwing. That belonged to Daddy. That was something he got in inheritance. He did not earn that.
No, definitely not. He didn't. I don't want to leave that impression that Justin Trudeau earned anything. No, gosh, no. Okay, we've got one more super chat, I think. We've got KT. Gives us $10, says, hot, depends where you come from. I meant to, I think when we were talking about the weather, I meant to add my previous animated super chat post, this Aussie loves Rebel News. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, we do have some very loyal and dedicated Rebel supporters in Australia. When we went to Israel 2 years ago, that's when David and I truly, truly bonded. We solidified our friendship there, and David learned a lot about me when we were there, my weaknesses and Achilles' heels. But we spent some time with some really great Rebel supporters, and our work with Avi Yamini has brought a lot of Australians into the fold. So that's great.
You know, did that not blow you away, Sheila, that people walking down the streets of Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, and it happened to me on a few occasions, and they go, hey, wait a minute, are you David Menzies with Rebel? And I'm in Israel. I mean, to me, it demonstrated the power of the internet, that, you know, there could be somebody somewhere in the backwoods of New Zealand watching this show right now, and it is just incredible, the reach, and it's very humbling, by the way, Sheila, when you see people that you've never met and they come up to you and they thank you for the work you do. And I was just blown away that we're on the other side of the world and we're getting recognized.
Yeah, it's funny how we go to Israel and people are like, hey, I love you guys, Rebel News, right on. And then you come here and your media is our media is calling us a bunch of Nazis. It's just ridiculous, right?
Well, you know, that's some Nazi we have, given the owner of the company is a Jew. Right? Yeah. Again, leftist logic that does not compute.
No, it's indicative of the bubble of Canadian media, right? Where, like, I forget who it was. It was somebody from CBC, and she was like, didn't even really realize who Tucker Carlson was. Like the highest rated, like the highest rated cable news channel, highest rated cable news show ever. And she didn't really know who he was or whatever. And I was like, you know what? That explains so much about the Canadian media landscape, that they don't even know, like, fine, you might not like Tucker Carlson, but if you are familiar with the industry in which you work, you should know who he is, what he's all about, and what he's done to news. Like, and she had no idea who really Tucker Carlson was.
That wasn't the same CBC reporter that ran away from me at Queen's Park because my hair was frightening and confusing her.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it was her. Let's keep going. Trudeau privilege gives us $6.99. Canadian said Rebel is amazing. Any inside information on a snap election? You know what? My only inside information is that I've seen government requests for like supplies on the government contracts website for election supplies. So I don't know if that's just general preparedness and replenishing things from the fall election, but they are ordering supplies. They're getting stuff ready. So I don't take that for what you will. It
makes sense, because if you believe the polls, Sheila, Justin Trudeau's popularity is soaring. But I can tell you, the Liberals would be the only one that would want to go ahead with that. The NDP is broke, I would say, both financially and intellectually. And I don't think the Bloc Québécois would want an election. They're so happy with the spectacular results they gleaned. The Conservatives, well, you know, I think they would like as much time to go by on their side. So, it would seem to be the thing to do when you're riding high in the polls to call that snap election. And I'm predicting right now, whenever that election is, given the other options there, it's going to be a Liberal majority government. I'll put money on that right now.
Well, and never underestimate the sleaziness of the progressive left. They would love to call an election while their opponents are handicapped by a leadership race. I pointed this out to Ezra last night in the live stream. They did the same thing in Alberta in 2015. The red Tory PCs at the time decided to call a snap election. The Wild Rose at the time were surging, but they had just had Danielle Smith break the party in half. So they didn't have a leader. They were scrambling. Half their MLAs had crossed the floor, but the people were still very supportive of the Wild Rose. So by the time Brian Jean started the leadership campaign to become the leader of the Wild Rose, to the time he was chosen, to the time of general election, and somewhere in the middle there, his son died. I think it was like 35 or 40 days. And that was the PCs trying to be opportunistic. It blew up in their face, and we got the NDP because people thought the Wild Rose aren't ready, and we just can't stomach another PC government. So Rachel Notley seemed like the reasonable choice. Still, it's astounding. But never underestimate how sleazy the progressive left can be. They will strike while the iron's hot. That's how they are.
And you know what? That election, Sheila, I think that'll be studied for decades to come. I think what you just described was a 1 in a billion perfect political storm that resulted in a result that I never would have dreamed of in my wildest nightmares, and probably will never, ever happen again. But, you know, for all those factors, yeah, that was one unique kettle of fish. You know, we should go to some video. We have, as you know, folks, I think one of our best and perhaps most important videos we've ever done in the 5-year history of this company is fighting for our rights to practice journalism at Nathan Phillips Square, which is now the site of a filthy tent city, but because it's deemed a sacred circle by the protesters, and because it's named Afro-Indigenous Rising, it is apparently untouchable, even though last Friday the city issued a trespass notice, which is plastered all over the square, noting 11 violations of the Trespass Act. It was allegedly going to be acted upon on Monday. Well, fat chance of that. Instead, yesterday the farmers market was supposed to go in to Nathan Phillips Square. It's being canceled. So once again, welcome to John Tory's Sanctuary City, Toronto, Sheila, where the takers are rewarded and the makers are penalized. And when we went down on our last visit, not only did we get roughed up and literally pushed all the way a couple hundred meters to Queen Street to take refuge in the Sheraton Hotel, wow, did we stumble across a real whopper, because we thought if you're having a camp out and there's all these tents at City Hall, you're actually living in the tents. But check out this, folks. You want to get involved with the Black Lives Matter movement that is going global, but you're a white person and you're kind of, wondering what the rules are, because you don't want to bring. That's a clip. We can talk about that later, Sheila. There is a Quaker organization that hired a genderqueer person. By the way, what is a queer gender? I'm having my Tucker Carlson moment with Stephen LeDrew. What's Two-Spirit? To outline the 9 rules that white people have to abide by when they go to a Black Lives Matter protest. It's all condensed into one sentence, which is basically this: know your role and shut your mouth and speak when spoken to. That's it. But we can get that later. It's the hotel one, Mr. Producer, and we're going to try to get that clip to you right now. But because she's a registered guest, she even took out her key card and showed it to us. Check it out. David Menzies for Rebel News here in Toronto. And folks, before I get to my story, please, if you can, go to journalistdefensefund.com. If you're able to, make a donation. We love to bring you the other side of the story, but sometimes there are some stories that, well, they obligate us to higher security because there are nefarious forces out there that don't want us to bring you that other side of the story. In any event, here is a bizarre sidebar to our most recent visit to Nathan Phillips Square in downtown Toronto, the home of City Hall. For a couple weeks now, the square has been occupied by a group calling itself Afro-Indigenous Rising. They're really a bunch of thugs. Sure, they're being called peaceful protesters, but check out some of this footage and you tell me if this is peaceful.
How are you?
You tell me, my friend.
I don't know. You look.
Sounds like we're all pretty sick, aren't we?
Get out of here.
We're all sick, my friend.
Get out of here, man.
Don't touch me.
Give us space.
Don't f***ing touch me.
Give us
I'm in a
space.
public square.
Come on, let's go. Let's go.
What the hell?
Come on! Don't touch me again, buddy.
Okay, so true to form, on our most recent visit, we were once again literally forced off the square, even though we had forced security, and we went right across Queen Street to the Sheraton Hotel, and that is when something incredible, I think, happened. You see, one of the stories I was hoping to bring you before we were shooed away was the fact that as we observed in our 12-hour stay at the square on Monday, almost all of those tents that you see in that so-called sacred circle are empty. In fact, a couple of tents actually blew away. There's literally nothing in them, and they had to be brought back to the circle. The ringleaders are based in the major big tents. That's where I believe the cooking equipment is and whatnot. And yes, they were told on Friday they were found guilty of, I believe, 11 sections of the Trespass Act. And they were supposed to leave today, Monday, but, well, the devil's in the details, isn't it, folks? Because the language of the trespass notice was the city may evict them, not will evict them. So take a look at this footage. We're going to the Sheraton Hotel, really just to get away from this mob. And there is a lady who is following us, and she said something astonishing. Basically, she's going to the Sheraton Hotel as well, not to harass us, but because she's a registered guest. She even took out her key card and showed it to us. Check it out.
Yes, can I show you my key? Yeah. I don't have a hotel. I have 2 room keys for the Sheraton right here. So I can enter the hotel because I'm paying to sleep here.
So isn't that interesting? I mean, here's this group. They're all about anarchy. They're all about systemic racism. They're all anti-capitalist and about tearing things down. But when it comes to the ringleaders of Afro-Indigenous Rising, you think they're staying outside overnight in this humidity in a tent with no plumbing? No, they're going to the Sheraton Hotel where the average room is over $200 a night. You know, it is incredible. We saw this exact same phenomena back in the days when Ezra and I were at Sun News Network, the tent city at St. James Park for the protest of the day then. That we proved with an infrared camera that the vast majority of the tents were empty and they were staying mostly at the Holiday Inn down the road. And then in February...
I went to Ottawa to Anne Cognito, not her real name. Remember the climate justice warrior who allegedly walked from Calgary to Ottawa? And if you believe that, folks, I've got some infrastructure in Brooklyn for sale. Her entire tent city was vacant as well, except for the tent she was in. All her followers were either in Mum's basement or at the chateau down the street. So 2 things, Sheila. First of all these tents, and we even had footage of one
not only was there nobody in it, there was no belongings in it because it blew across the square right to City Hall. There are more tents than there are people, so you might think this is a great show of force. It's not. It's all about optics. And secondly, that woman who showed us her key card, rooms at the Sheraton start at $277 per night. This begs the question, where is the money coming from? And I just, a few hours ago, had a viewer send me an email. I have to check this out, so I don't know if it's verified yet, folks. But she claims there was a GoFundMe page for this group that raised something like $49,000. Now, Sheila, I wonder how much love in the hearts of these donors they have when they raised that kind of dough to find out that the ringleaders of this tent city is using that money, allegedly, to stay at rooms costing at least $277 per night. The hypocrisy is off the charts. Like I said, the farmers market is canceled. I'm sure the art fair that's due to start tomorrow, that will be canceled. And the city continues to negotiate with these thugs, unaware or unacknowledging the fact that what these scoundrels want is the police to come in and forcibly remove them from the camp. You saw that black lady in the footage from our meeting of our visit there 2 weeks ago, lying on the ground screaming. She fell down by herself.
Yeah.
I mean, Meryl Streep right now is quaking in her shoes because she might win Best Actress at the Academy Awards next year. So, Sheila, once again, it's a tactic right out of Antifa 101 in terms of a occupation. Make people think that it is much bigger than what it really is.
Yeah, well, these organizers are put up in the probably 3-star Sheraton.
Higher.
Higher? 4, 5, 4?
3-star, how dare you? You don't expect us to stay at a Motel 6, do you?
Slumming it. We only stay in 3 stars because we care about how we spend our money when we're traveling for Rebel News. 3 stars or Airbnb, whatever's cheaper. It's the level of exploitation also that I think is being missed in a lot of this. They are using, again, homeless people and mentally ill people that they've invited into their tent city as cannon fodder. Those people have to stay and hold down the fort while they are up there in their 4-star hotel because they don't want to get their hands dirty. And when the police move in, it's going to be the mentally ill and the homeless people who are getting the tickets or getting to spend a night in jail. It's not going to be these people. All the fakery reminds me of, remember Chief Teresa Spence, Chief Chicken Noodle, on her hunger strike in Ottawa as part of Idle No More, while her and her boyfriend were ripping off the band where she lived.
That was a very unique definition of hunger strike, Sheila. I believe Chief Teresa Spence was saying, I won't stop eating until I get justice. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, she was living off broth, but she's the only person I've ever seen on a hunger strike bulk up a little bit. But her boyfriend or partner, as they say, he did get in trouble for misappropriating band funds. I'm not sure if she did or not. I don't think that she ended up in legal trouble, but there were some hinky things happening at the band council there. Their houses were falling down and she was rolling in an Escalade. And Justin Trudeau went to visit her at her teepee in Ottawa, and where she was allegedly having this hunger strike where she was packing on the pounds. And I guess every night she was spending her time in a luxurious hotel around the block. It's all fake. It's always all fake. It's always all a stunt. And these organizers never get their hands dirty. I think it's disgusting. And it is not hard to uncover this stuff, as you found out. You just sort of It's right there, out in the open. You just have to be looking for it. But there's not a skeptical person in the mainstream media who wonders, who's funding all of this, and are these people actually here at night? Nobody's asking those questions except us.
Indeed, because the media is cheering them on. Yeah, and I remember that meeting with Justin, and of course Teresa went into the TP to have 100 cups of tea, and then had to leave the TP to pee.
Is that how it went?
I just made that up off the cuff. I believe we have super chats that can rescue me.
I can tell that wasn't rehearsed. We've got a super chat from MEC, gives us $1.80. I don't see a super chat though. Thank you very much. Prairie Rider gives us $2.79. Still nothing for the disabled. I'm assuming you mean from Justin Trudeau, but $500 for the retired. Yes, that's right. Nathan Finn, $500 for the retired, for people who aren't working, haven't lost their jobs, but they're getting more money. I mean, just anyways. Nathan Fink gives us $5. You guys are great. That's for talking truth to power. Thank you very much. It's our job to hold politicians to account on behalf of the people, and in the mainstream media, it's completely the other way around. They hold the people to account on behalf of Justin Trudeau. They'll hunt you down if you say something a little bit out of line that they disagree with. They'll come after a private citizen just to shut them up, and in turn that shuts everybody else up, doesn't it? Eric Ross gives us $20. Thank you very much. New here, but willing to support balance in reporting. Mainstream media does not seem to be interested in reporting more than the narrative. Whatever happened to investigative reporting? Where is freedom of speech? I'm proud to say that we do both, don't we? We fight for freedom of speech, and we try to do as much investigative journalism as we can, whether it's reading reams of paper or, as David points out, just going places where the news is, which is investigative journalism these days.
And Sheila, if I may weigh in, the reason why, I mean, this is where the media can truly shine, not just chasing ambulances, but investigative reporting. And the reason why that is a dying, if not dead art in Canada and around the world, media properties, they're money losers now. Investigative journalism is extremely expensive. It is super time consuming. It needs information to be lawyered. That's expensive. There's the potential for lawsuits. That's expensive. And so the media is just, it's not worth it. Let's take the path of least resistance, especially now that try being a salesperson at a newspaper trying to sell a full color full page ad in a newspaper these days. Papers that once were bulky enough that you could do arm curls with them, Sheila, they're now basically flyers almost. It's kind of sad in a way, but in another way it isn't, because they brought it upon themselves. But anyways, that is why investigative journalism is just about dead.
Well, and people see the finished product of an access to information investigation, and it ends up being like a 6 or 8 minute report. I try to keep them to there because I could go on forever, but nobody wants to watch me talk for that long, except for you people here right now. Sorry, you guys are tuned in for an hour. But I mean, that oftentimes the investigation starts with a question or hunch a year or 18 months before, and that's how long it takes to get those documents. You get the documents, you read through them. Now you're left with another question. You've got to get more documents now. You apply for those. It takes some time to get them. They're redacted. You have to appeal. And you end up reading stacks and stacks of paper and asking all these additional questions just to get to a 6 or 8 minute news story where you've read 1,000 pages just to find the one important thing that people deserve to know that the government tried to keep from you. And frankly, it's a lot easier to write stories on what conservative said on Twitter, which seems to be so much of what the news is these days. It's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of patience, and it's a lot of intellectual curiosity that I think is sorely lacking in the mainstream media these days.
And Sheila, two things. One is no one does FOI analysis better than you. You are the best in the entire Dominion. And secondly, in fairness, sometimes the mainstream media does, rise to the occasion, and they do a little investigative digging, such as when that CTV reporter asked Justin Trudeau what brand of shampoo he uses.
Yeah. This is pressing issues. Really
I'll never
something
forget
else.
that.
Yeah. We've got a super chat from Patricia Maskey. Patricia, I'm so sorry. $10 Canadian. She says, thank you. Thank you for your unending patience with me, Patricia. Lisa P gives us $2. Love your work, Sheila and David. You're both amazing. Thank you very much, Lisa. Zen AX gives us $2. Says Trudeau is as useful as wet toilet paper in a tornado.
Never had the experience.
No. Abu Baker El Puff Daddy's back in the chat. We haven't seen you in a while.
Wow.
But maybe you were on vacation. Hopefully you were doing something pleasant instead of awful. $50 Canadian.
Vacation right now, Sheila, is another word for governing Canada. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, no kidding. Morning, Gunny and Menzoid. Yes, I'm back. What is the situation with Alberta farmers? Have things improved? We were just talking about this morning around the breakfast table. Things are not great. China has just banned Canadian beef again because of the coronavirus. They're banning our beef because of the coronavirus, if you can believe that. And that comes on the heels of those shutdowns of the plants south of Calgary. Those are back up and operational, I think, at about 95%. But there was a serious backlog in beef there for quite some time. Panic buying of food has really helped farmers, but harvest conditions last year were absolutely terrible. A lot of farmers were taking their harvests off this spring, and so they're delayed getting their crops back in the ground. And then now it's been raining for like 40 days straight. It's time to build an ark. So just some of the numbers: 70% less cash were taken in by farmers in 2018. From the 2018 numbers, 2019 was down 45%. And so what did we get in the middle of all this? A carbon tax. So that should tell you about how farmers are doing right now here out west.
One word, Wexit.
Yeah.
Really?
Why stay?
Yeah.
Let's keep going. Lisa P gives us $2. David, you are so brave when you go to Nathan Phillips Square.
Thank you.
Absolutely. David, you're one of the bravest journalists, if not the bravest journalist in Canada, but always a happy warrior. These people, they're so miserable and vulgar and humorless and witless. And you just, like Ezra says, you're like Columbo. You just ask a question, ask a question, ask a question until they make total idiots of themselves, and then they blow up. And you've done nothing except just press them on their ideology, and it always with a smile. So I think people appreciate that.
And these days, Sheila, when you know ahead of time you're probably going to get a left hook, you're kind of ready for it, right? But I gotta tell you, if there's there's viewers saying that I should take some MMA training to get out of these pickles, and maybe that's something worth pursuing. Who knows? Because as we've seen with the security guards, and now even with law enforcement themselves, it's that's a no-go zone, that you're on your own. They've even said that you're on your own if you go there. Sheila, to me, there is no such thing as rule of law if rule of law is not enforced. And that's happening in the sanctuary city of Toronto today. So sad.
And just to add to truly how crazy these people are, you're not a small guy. Like, you're a big guy, like a tall guy. Maybe it's because I'm not a big lady, but you're a tall guy and you are solid. Like, you're a former hockey player. And so, but these are just people just soyed right up on sugar and rage, and they are coming at you. And maybe they weigh 140 pounds all in, these men, and they want to attack you and they want to fight you. That's how crazy these people are. If you wanted to drop them like a sack of ugly potatoes, you could. You don't, because then you're the story.
It's true. I was the first round draft pick of the LA Kings in 1980. I wear that as a badge of honor. And I could probably. Why are you smiling like that?
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, oh, by the way, not the Los Angeles Kings, the Lawrence Avenue Kings. It was like an intramural squad. But I was still the first round pick.
That's okay. I think there's a hockey team in Leduc, Alberta, that they call themselves the LA Kings, too. So it's fine. Not the first guy to make that joke.
or as Mr. Producer calls that team, because hockey's not his thing, the La Kings. He thought it was a French hockey club. I don't know.
I can't
Carry
hear
on,
Justin,
Sheila.
but I'm
I think
sure
we
it
have
was
some more
snart,
super chats.
straight snart. Okay, David Anderson gives us $5 Canadian. Got my OAS bump the other day. That's your Trudeau OAS bump. Sending half to Rebel. Oh, thank you
Wow.
very much.
Thank you.
And half to the CCFR. So the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. That's fantastic.
Great.
Them, like us, we know how to stretch a buck, and we're going to use it, both of us, to fight for freedom. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. And you also say CCP delenda est. From your lips to God's ears. Garrett Waugh gives us $10 Canadian. This is the first time I've donated and would love to donate more, but I've been out of job for 3 months. Terrible. Defund CBC, build up our military, Navy, and stand strong with USA and international. Yeah, I mean, I'm fiscally conservative on almost everything. I don't like the government spending my money, but when you say, let's buy the military new stuff, I say crack open the wallet.
Yeah.
Every time.
And really, Sheila, if we took that $1.6 billion of taxpayer money and put it to military spending or to economic recovery, it would be a dollar so well spent, given the garbage that gets broadcast by that state-run broadcaster. I'm telling you, it is breaking my heart. The more I go around downtown Toronto and the periphery of the GTA, and I'm coming across nail salons, barbershops, you name it, and I see in the window not the hours of operation, but for rent, for lease, for sale. Mainstream, whenever the normal really does get back to normal, it ain't going to look like it was 6 months ago. There has been so much carnage, trillions and trillions of dollars the world over, thanks to that Beijing regime. But yet, even calling it the Wuhan virus, the place of origin for this, you're condemned as racist. This is insanity, and it breaks my heart that we have enough money like that. And that's just the CBC money. I haven't even gotten into the magazine money and the newsprint money and all the rest. But we have all this money for government propaganda, but not for people that have had their livelihoods forever eradicated thanks to this Beijing virus.
You know, every time I see one of those for lease signs in a storefront or a restaurant front, I always think, like, it's not just like that business. Like, a business is just money, I guess, but it is a family. That's something they built. That was their hopes and dreams. Those were their employees, their part-time employees, where they were giving young people job skills that would take with them to the rest of their life. I mean, most people remember their first job and what they learned there. I know I do. And I remember the family that gave me my first job. And it helped me develop a work ethic. I think I was sort of born with a work ethic because I was raised on a farm, but just working with other people and what employers expect of you, that's all gone. That's just vaporized from the economy right now. We're going to have a generation of kids who aren't going to have those first job skills with the devastation and carnage that's going to unfold in our hospitality business. And it's terrible. It's just like, there are, beyond the economic problems, there are going to be societal problems that come from all these small businesses ending.
100%. And Sheila, by the way, on the topic of CBC, I know it's a fantasy of mine that will never be fulfilled, but if in an alternative universe, if the CBC, which we're told it's so iconic, it's so important, it's a force for unity, blah, 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 if that is true, if they were to embrace a PBS style of funding where they reach out to the viewers, much like we reach out to the viewers, how much money on an annual basis, how much of that $1.5 billion do you think they would receive in voluntary donations? What percentile, Sheila, do you think would come into their coffers?
I think it would be shocking to them, but not to me, low.
Good answer.
In much the same way that, and I think they know it, like a lot of people at the CBC know that if you were not forcibly extracting money from struggling taxpayers' pockets to line your own, nobody would pay for it. in much the same way that unions oppose right-to-work legislation.
Yeah.
Because they know if you were not forced to join their little NDP group, you wouldn't. And they know that if people were given the choice, they would choose something better and something that they actually wanted. Because the viewership numbers for CBC, I think they're reflective of the demand for CBC, quite frankly, and they're just a statistical rounding error.
You know, Sheila, I think you're right, but I think there'd be a segment of people that work for the CBC that actually believe the BS that they're spouting, that they are so entitled, they are so, I don't know, oblivious to what the mood of the nation is, that they really think they are important and respective and revered broadcasters when, like I said, if we ever put that to an experiment, just 1 year, cut the funding and have them solicit funds, wow, what a shocker that would be. What a reality check for those pompous asses down on Front Street.
Yeah, they think of themselves as this like important part of the Canadian cultural fabric, when the rest of us really don't care or think about CBC in a day, unless it's me being critical of them. I really don't think about them or wondering what they're doing with all that money they take from Canadians. I mean, could you imagine if we had $1.5 billion? Oh, wow. Could you imagine the footprint we would leave? But for them, they get all this money, and frankly, nobody really knows that they exist when it comes to news. Like, who's watching them? Nobody.
Boy, with $1.5 billion, Sheila, we could buy Mr. Producer a real car.
You
Anyways,
too.
Carry on.
You too. Okay.
How dare you?
Travis Coulson gives us $6.99. Travis is also a regular viewer, regular donor. $6.99. Hit that like. Rebel News, the other side of the story. Yeah. Our other motto, I forget what our other motto is, because it has been telling the other side of the story for so long. And I know that's been my personal motto at Rebel News is sometimes my stories are shamelessly conservative, but I still believe that we're providing balance to the media landscape as much as we can, considering everything over here is anti-conservative left-wing nonsense. And we're over here just saying, okay, but these are the facts that you missed.
Wasn't our first motto fearless?
Fearless,
yes.
Which is still true. But I think that goes without saying about us. Lisa P gives us $2, says, thank you, Rebel News, for being the only, I think she meant to say the only media outlet caring for Canadians. I think that's because we're regular people. David, you have a journalism background,
yes,
which makes you the exception and not the rule at Rebel News. I don't have a journalism background. I have like a social media research background just as a hobby, but I'm not a trained journalist. Ian's not a trained journalist. Very few of us are trained journalists. Ezra comes from a law background and political activism. So I think that's what makes us different, is because we're normal people. And so we care about normal people issues. I know I do. I care about agricultural issues and oil and gas because that's where I'm from. I don't work in an office cubicle for the CBC.
Yes, I indeed have a Master's of Journalism from Ryerson University back when it was called Ryerson Polytechnical Institute, and that and a $1.85 get you an extra large coffee at McDonald's.
Jeez. Joseph Slobodnik gives us $2.79. What do you think of putting the CBC up for sale? I say part it out like an old minivan. Just sell it for pieces. Garrett Waugh gives us $2 Canadian. Ran out of room. Protect international waters. Yes, I agree. Especially with Russian imperialism growing strong in the Arctic.
Sheila, protect international waters with what? Are we going to get the Haida out of dry dock in Hamilton that served in the Korean War to patrol our coastline?
Yeah, we should treat it to Tremclad and just get it out there, spray it up with some rust paint, get it up there.
Oh, God.
Maria K. Yeah, that's the thing. We need military procurement if we want to protect Canadian sovereignty. Maria K. gives us $25 Canadian. Thank you, Rebel News. You're all great. Oh, thank you. Did you have a chance to interview Norman Traversy, justiceforcanada.ca? I know, David, you've covered Norman Traversy in the past.
Yeah, we bumped into him the night before the Dominion Day rally, and I made him a $100 bet that his procedure is not going to go anywhere. And listen, I know there's good intentions behind what Norm is doing. I mean, he was serving, legal papers to the American embassy in Ottawa, and basically it's the idea under the free trade agreement that was a provision that kicked in on July 1st that these, the American and Mexican government, I hope I'm getting this right, could indeed investigate Canada for chicanery like SNC Lavalin and what have you. But yep. Sheila, let's be realistic here. The very idea that, especially in an election year, Donald Trump is going to have some kind of investigation into how the Liberals are dealing with internal Canadian companies, and the idea that the Mexican president, I mean, you want to talk about supersized corruption, that would really be the pot calling the kettle African American. No, that ain't going to happen either. So, you served the American embassy with these papers, Norm, and I know your heart's in the right place and all that, but it will not amount to anything. I'm sorry to say that. And by the way, please give me an email so I can give you my address for that $100 you owe me.
Let's keep going because we're at the end of the show and we still have lots of super chats. Yes. Saniko gives us $2 Canadian. Will Rebel do an interview with Jay Hill of Wexit? Yes, Jay Hill is the new leader of the Wexit party here, and he's a former cabinet minister for the Conservatives. Cabinet minister? I might be getting that wrong, but former MLA or MP, definitely. And so like a prominent, legitimate figure in Western Canadian Conservative politics, a very credible person. He's on my list of people to interview. I think he's based in Calgary, so we might have to unleash the key in on him, but we definitely love to talk to Jay Hill. Stephen Bent gives us $25. Read Ezra's new book, China Virus, last night. Great book, and I encourage everyone to go buy it. I do too. Great work, Rebel News. Keep up the good work. Abu Baker Alpuff Daddy gives us another $10. Gunny and Menzoid, given your experience in confronting Antifa, what's your opinion of these people? Are they on drugs?
You know what?
Do they have mental health concerns? Do they sincerely believe they're left-wing BS?
The vast majority of them, Sheila, I believe, have been brought up in an incredibly sheltered bubble. They latch on to political correctness. They have been taught, I would imagine, by a lot of Marxist teachers post-secondary. Seems that so many of them are just professional students. They don't know what to do with that gender studies degree because really there is no job when it comes to a gender studies degree other than teaching gender studies, and all those cats are tenured Marxist professors. So they're very wimpy, and if there were to be a mano-a-mano fight, it would be a bloodbath. They are cowards. They gather in numbers like cowards do. They wear disguises as cowards do. And that is the typical Antifa. They are a snowflake that feels emboldened and entitled as long as they have a mass of numbers on their side. And what's really insidious, Sheila, they come into your grill, they come into your face, and the moment you're walking away and you just brush into them, they go into drama queen mode, they pretend they're assaulted, they actually call the police. They are the worst of the worst. They are the bullies who pretend to be victims just as a way of trying to trap you into a situation. That is my experience with Antifa.
Yeah, I would also suggest that there's a fair bit of them that are methed up maniacs who are just there for the $50 for the day. Yep. But because they are methed up maniacs, they are also highly dangerous, prone to impulsivity. They'll hit you in the face with a bike lock when you're trying to report. So, I mean, there are the ones that are, weaklings and flinging themselves on the ground like French soccer players. But there are the lunatics, and they're all in the mix together. And you don't know who the lunatic is and who's the wussy. And that's what makes them so dangerous. And
can I just do a quick shout out to Pastor David Lynn? He was the guy a while back who was arrested for preaching the gospel in the gay village, saying absolutely zero hateful. on Saturday, and we covered it, I think the video's up, Sheila, Pastor David Lynn had a pro-life rally. Now, here's the thing. When you do a pro-life rally in Toronto, you can count on the Antifa types, the hairy armpit feminists to come out en masse and try to shut you down and cause all kinds of problems. But Pastor Lynn, in a stroke of absolute genius and brilliance, he advertised the pro-life rally as Indigenous and black babies and all babies matter. And so what we see what happened, Sheila, he put the black and Indigenous angle there, and the left had system shutdown. They didn't know what to do, so they didn't show up. They didn't harass them. They got to say their words just by using one of the tricks of the left. So, Pastor Lynn, you are a brilliant man for thinking of a way to outwit the pro-abortion forces.
We should keep going because we're way over time and we still have so many super chats because we have the most generous viewers in all of media coverage. Nathan Fink gives us $5 Canadian. How do Canadians feel about our President Trump? I think it depends on who you ask. I know sentiment out west is pretty strong in favor of President Trump. We like him. He's going to help us get our oil to export markets. We're conservative. He's conservative. That's great. I think if you ask people in other parts of the country who are regular consumers of the mainstream media, they probably would be inclined to not like him as much as we do.
Well, I love him, and I think if he does not win the next election come November 3rd, I shudder. I'm actually terrified to think of what's going to happen to America in the next 4 years. So, like I said, this is the most important election since the Civil War, 1860, 1864. And Mr. Producer, I'm going to cut you off. The first elections I covered? No. Anyways, go ahead, Sheila.
Jeez. Can I play with madness? Because that's $5 Canadian. I've been called Indian, Native, First Nations, Indigenous. I identify as Caucasianally challenged. Love the rebel. Thank you very much. That's great. Ken Tate gives us $20. Love you guys. David and Sheila, another person just reached out to you from down here, charged for actually having the mad temerity to walk along Coburg Beach. This might be a David story. Many thanks for standing for us, little guys. You're welcome.
Do you know what? If you can reach out to that person, if you know him, I mean, I had the temerity to build a sandcastle outside the steel fence of Coburg Beach on Dominion Day. So, fight the fines is still a thing if they're handing out these ridiculous tickets. Yeah. And please send that information to us. We'll pursue it.
Zen AX is obviously a Edmonton viewer. So gives us $2 Canadian. Says Riverdale Farm smells better than City Hall lately. If we're talking about Edmonton City Hall and their recent kowtowing to Black Lives Matter protesters protesting something that happened in the United States, and they just cut $11 million from the police budget. We're going to have problems in Edmonton, and it already has a crime problem. It's twice the national rate of incidences of violent or crime per 100,000 people. It's twice the national rate, higher than the provincial rate, which is already high given the bad economy and all the social and societal problems that go along with that. And then they've decided to cut just $11 million out of the police budget. The serial killers in the neighborhood will probably appreciate that, but Sheila, I don't think normal Edmontonians are going to be all for this.
I thought Riverdale was that place. It was nice. It's got Reggie and Jughead and Moose and Archie. And by the way, I could never figure out the Archie coffee. Why are the two hottest chicks in Riverdale, Betty and Veronica, fighting over the affection of Archie, a guy that's got like an X and O game inscribed into his side of his head? I can never figure that out. Could you, Sheila?
You gingers have a certain appeal to a certain kind of lady.
Well, I don't like.
And I say that as a woman married to a redhead. So Jake of all trades gives us $5. Says keep it up. Ohio fan stands with you. Thanks. There's a lot of Americans in the super chats today. Bob gives us $2.79. David could be a comedian. I can't stop laughing. That makes one of us, Bob. Fraser McBurney gives us $5 Canadian. The story was front page news in Mexico. I'm sorry. That Trudeau skipped the meetings. Yeah, it's slightly embarrassing. He had other things to do, don't you know? Like shaking the money tree in the back of Rideau Cottage.
This is merely a snub to Trump during an election year. That's all it is, Sheila. You know, this dude is just staying in his cottage, playing video games, smoking weed, and comes down every time at 11 a.m. Mr. Producer's doing this. It either means I'm crazy or we got to wrap this show. I think it means we got to wrap this show.
It's the universal symbol for David.
So, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. A special super thank you for the super chatters. So, on the behalf of Sheila Gunn-Reid, who I think is channeling the lovely Miss Elizabeth with her Randy the Macho Man t-shirt today, Mr. Producer, who is a proud new owner of something, and fake Deborah Harry, I'm David Menzies, bidding you adieu, and we'll see you again on Tuesday.